Carrie from Lovely Etc. and today I'm going to show you how to make a huge metal wreath. You can also use this tutorial to just make a normal sized metal wreath, but it's especially great if you want to make a really giant wreath. So I have this wall right here in my office, this geometric wall, and I love the texture, but it looks like it needs a little something. I don't really want to cover up the whole thing with a big, huge piece of framed art, but I wanted to add something. So I thought maybe I would make a hula hoop wreath. But then I had an even better idea. When I was at Lowe's looking around to buy some supplies for my hula hoop wreath, I realized that instead of buying a hula hoop and spray primer and spray paint for just a few dollars more, I could buy copper tubing and have a real metal wreath instead of painting something plastic to look like metal. So what I found was this copper tubing. It's copper coil and it comes in various sizes. You can get different thicknesses, different lengths. I bought mine at Lowe's and I got 3/8 inch thickness, which is this size, and 10 feet of length. If you just want to make a 19-20 inch wreath, kind of a typical wreath size, you could get the cheaper 5-foot length. But if you want to make a really huge wreath like me, you're going to need to get the 10 foot. Along with my copper tubing or copper coil, I also got a little coupler that is also 3/8 inch size. And I'm also going to be using a copper tubing cutter. We already have this on hand because we have copper pipes for our plumbing and we've had to make repairs in the past. But if you don't have one of these, you can also cut the copper tubing with a hacksaw or with an oscillating tool like a Dremel. You're only going to be making one simple straight cut, so don't let that stop you from doing this project. My coil, my 10-foot piece of coil, was around $15, which I think is a pretty great deal, and it has me thinking about all kinds of ideas of projects I could do using this copper coil. And along with my copper, I also have a bunch of stems of fake ferns and fake greenery to attach to my wreath, along with wire to attach it, and some wire pliers and wire cutters. The first thing you're going to do is form the wreath shape with your copper tubing. And it's really easy to bend and shape with your hands. Copper is a very soft metal and it's super flexible. So this is pretty easy to do. Once you get it to the size that you're looking for, just make sure to mark where you need to cut your tubing. I am using a tubing cutter to cut my copper coil, and it is super easy to use even if you've never done it before. All you need to do is slide it onto the copper coil where you want to cut it, and then tighten the screw knob until it is gently just resting against the copper. And then slowly continue to tighten the screw knob as you rotate the cutter around the copper. And after a few rotations, it will just cut cleanly right through the tubing and leave a nice clean straight edge. Alright, so I played around with my hoop shape a little bit. It's pretty easy to bend and adjust to get just the right shape that you want. And I think I've got a pretty good circle now, so I'm ready to attach it and connect the two ends together. So I believe that normally when you're working with this type of pipe, you would solder the coupling onto the tubing, but I'm just making a wreath, so instead I'm just going to put some hot glue in each end and attach the coupling that way. Okay, so I've added a lot of greenery and vines and things to my wreath with it laid out flat on a table because that's really the easiest way to work. But I find this best when you're making wreaths to do any final adjustments when it's hanging up, because when you move something from a horizontal surface to a vertical surface, sometimes things move around and shift and gravity gets its claws in there and you need to just make a few little tweaks. I also found that glue gun did not really work for this. I thought that it might help keep things in place, but I didn't have good luck with that. So instead, for me, what has worked best with really attaching everything to the copper is just using wire and using wire pliers to really get it tight and twist it on so that it stays in place. Okay, when it's time to hang your wreath, you have a few options. You can go with the simple nail root. Behind me right now, it's currently hanging on just a little finishing nail on the wall. The nail is so tiny, it's hard to even see it. You could also wrap a little bit of a leather strap or some kind of twine around the top of your wreath to give it a little something more and hang that from a nail or from the top of a door. Or if you want to be a little bit extra, which I do, I have another suggestion. So I have a few of these copper pipe straps that are left over from a project I did a few years ago. These are with the copper pipes in home improvement stores, and they're meant to attach the pipes to the wall. But of course I am not using it for that. I have another idea. So to hang my wreath, I took one of these straps and bent it to be more in this shape just by bending these two bits together. And if it's Copper's a pretty soft metal, but if it's a bit hard for you to do, you can get a pair of pliers. That's what I did and helped get it to this shape. So then you're going to take your bracket you just made and slip it over the top of your wreath. It should snap into place. You can bend it closed again. And now you have 2 holes that should be perfectly lined up, and you can use these 2 holes to hang your wreath on the wall. You can use a copper nail if you want it to all match really well, or you can just hang it over a regular nail. It's not going to make a big difference or stand out that much. So I'm pretty thrilled with how my wreath turned out. I love the copper and the greenery, and it was pretty easy, and also it was fun just playing around with it, figuring out how to make it work. I'm really glad that I discovered this copper instead of just making a hula hoop wreath. I may someday still make a hula hoop wreath. I still think they're cool, but this is so much better. And if you're wondering, yes, the copper will start to tarnish over time. I can already see some places on my wreath where I touched it a lot where it's starting to darken. To me, that's part of the greatness of making stuff with copper. I think it's beautiful when it's shiny and new. I think it's beautiful when it starts to tarnish and darken. And I think it's beautiful when it develops a patina. So it's kind of a win-win-win in my opinion. If you don't like that, maybe using real copper isn't the best for you. If you haven't, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel, Lovely Etc., where I share lots of inexpensive DIY ideas for creating a home that you love.